Welcome back to Open Your Eyes. Joining us for our second conversation, it's all about building community resilience during the hurricane season, and we have the experts in to talk to us about that. We have the principal hydrologist at the National Meteorological Service of Belize, Ms. Tenille Henry. Good morning. And next to her is the hydrology unit. Apologies. And then we have the National Emergency Coordinator at the National Emergency Management Organization, Mr. Daniel Mendes. Good morning. And Chief Meteorologist Ronald Gordon. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, folks.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We were having a brief chit chat before the end of the commercial break about good news, and so far we have been blessed to not see any major hurricane come our way. What has been the rest of the hurricane season to be forecasted so far?
Okay, if you may allow me to start off with original predictions. So certainly at the start of the season, we were expecting it to be just below normal to above. So the prediction was for there to be about 13 to 19 named storms. On average, it's 14. And in terms of hurricane, it was from 6 to 10. On average, we have 7 hurricanes. And of those, 3 to 5 typically become major hurricanes. Currently, we are looking at a below average scenario. So as you may know, the hurricane season starts in June. And so for June, July, August, and much of September, we have not been seeing that much activity. I think currently we're at 6 named storms and only 1 hurricane, which was a major hurricane, by the way, a category 5. But so far, it has been quite inactive. However, we still have, as you rightly mentioned, 3 more months approximately, or 2 months plus to go in the season. So we need to keep vigilant. And we do know that late September, October is typically when we see activity in this area. However, the good news on the short term is that there is nothing on the horizon. So for the next 5 days or so, at least we can relax that there's not going to be any major hurricane or any hurricane coming our way. However, we will get rains.
We have been getting rains.
Significant rains.
Indeed. Have we ever experienced, this hemisphere, have we ever experienced any major hurricanes outside of the scope of the hurricane season?
Not major. There has been systems developing outside of the hurricane season. Typically, they are tropical storms at most, or in some cases, weak hurricanes. But there has not been a major hurricane outside of the official hurricane season from June to November.
So the buzzword has been climate resilience. When you talk about majority of the government departments that deal with natural resources, that deal with sustainable development, that deals with meteorology, everybody is saying we need to create or build a more climate resilient Belize. For the benefit of our viewers who don't understand what comes to play when we discuss the issue of climate resilience, what are we looking at? Anyone can take
Anybody can take that question.
Well, if I may again, from our aspect or from our perspective, at the disaster risk management perspective, our resilience is having an effective early warning system. That's one way of being resilient. It's not the only way, but from our perspective, it's having a reliable early warning system so that persons can prepare in advance for whatever may come. We know we cannot stop the hazards. There is no way we can go there and stop a hurricane from coming. But if people are able to prepare in advance, that's one way of being resilient. And that's the short term. There's also long-term resilience in terms of planning better, preparing better, making better decisions about where you build your houses, for example, and that type of thing.
What has the National Emergency Management Organization been working towards in terms of perhaps a disaster risk reduction plan within the past couple of years?
Well, we have been doing several things, particularly looking at revising the way we do our outreach to people and really to embrace that concept of disaster risk reduction. So the disaster risk reduction has 3 components which create this thing called disaster risk. So number 1, there's exposure. The second part is the hazard itself, and the third part is the vulnerability part. So in terms of a hazard, there's not much we can do. As Mr. Gordon has been explaining, things have been changing. There's nothing we can do to change those hazards. But But there are things that we can do to limit or to reduce the exposure of our people to these hazards, and this is what we were talking about in terms of land use planning, and there's many different things that can and should be done. Thirdly is the vulnerability, that part of reducing persons' vulnerability, but also increasing their capacity to adapt. So this is where investments have to be made, not only in systems such as the MET, hydrology, and NEMO, but also down to the individual person, down to the individual, where people have to learn more about these hazards, and they have to learn more about the things that they have to do. If we are able to do all of these things, we will be able to reduce the disaster risk. And so when things do happen, we're able to bounce back, and we're able to get back to where we were before the disaster event.
How does NEMO set out to perhaps change public perception that as an organization it appears to be more reactionary than it is being proactive in terms of preparing and ensuring that the messages get out there the proper way?
So this has been one of the things that we have been working on for a few months now. So yes, we have as an organization have to be ready to react when things happen, but at the same time we have to make sure we take steps to be prepared. And so the changing, the messaging and getting things out to people is important. And so we have been doing a lot of outreach at the community level. We have been making investments in creating community emergency response teams where there are teams out on the ground ready to respond, but also to ensure that messages are being passed on before things happen. So there are other policies that we're changing as well, looking at the way we operate to ensure that we're not just waiting for something to happen, but we are actually doing things throughout the year. So NEMO itself is a big thing. It's a big concept, and so there's what we call the NEMO Secretariat, which is headed by me and my small office. But the NEMO, the system is the entire government, all of our partners, all of the public. That becomes the system whenever there's an event. And so it will exist at all different levels, at the national level, at the district level, at the community level. So when we speak about NEMO, it's really that the whole society that needs to be, the mindset needs to be changed. And so that is something that we have. It's a change that we all have to share. So it can't be just only to the NEMO Secretariat, but it's something that everyone needs to invest in.
How does hydrology fit into all of this?
Okay, so hydrology, everyone knows us for flooding. Apart from flooding, nobody really hears from the hydrology service. We're kind of that incognito agency. We're visible when we need to be, but primarily in the disaster risk function, we provide early warning for all types of flooding in Belize. We need to maintain a close collaboration with our colleagues, specifically NEMO and MET, that we are keeping them apprised of, what's the changes. We were discussing previous to the coming on the show that there is a need to update all our parameters that are needed. And it's funny that you mentioned climate resilience, because climate resilience impacts us in terms of the hydrology sector, the water sector. All the impacts from climate change, you're seeing it in your water resources. You're seeing it in your land use planning. We can have plans to have a 500-acre farm, but if we don't have water or it's being flooded, then what's the use? So for us, for climate resilience, it means that we need to have those parameters as accurate as possible. We know they won't be 100% because they're driven by models, and a model is a model is a model. It's good now, and 1 minute from now it changes the entire viewpoint. So we need to be able to work together closely, build one system as opposed to individual systems. I know as Belizeans we're used to doing our own thing and working by ourselves, but in disaster risk it's definitely a team effort, and collaboration needs to be at the forefront.
I wanted to bring the attention, especially when we're talking about heavy rains throughout the course of the weekend, the Belize City conundrum. And I call it like that because even if it doesn't rain the way it did over the weekend, it tends to flood regardless. How are your various organizations addressing this issue? But do you see that citizens are also trying to be as resilient as they can be?
Well, From the flooding perspective, we do realize that there needs to be a flood model developed for Belize City. And this is because there are many influences that affect flooding in Belize, as well as there are human-induced factors that affect flooding. If you don't clear your drains, you throw garbage in your drains, it effectively stops up the drain. It cannot flow. It's similar to when you're bathing and your hair is in your tub and it gets stuck in the drain pipe and you have the water flowing out very, very slowly. Or if you clean it, it goes very fast. These are some of the things that we're looking at. So definitely modeling has to be done if we're talking about climate resilient housing. You need to know in what areas, should I build near to the floor, near to the ground, or do I need to put it on pillars, on stilts as we call it. So from our viewpoint, that's what we're looking at. How can we build a model to more understand how drainage affects Belize City? We know that there are influences. The Belize River at the new Hallover Bridge, it requires dredging. If you don't dredge it, the silt or the sediment builds up and then it backs up and it goes through Hallover Creek, which comes under Chitamal Street Bridge into Belize, proper Belize City, and then you have additional siltation at the Swing Bridge. So these are factors that need to be modeled to ensure that we are effectively using the flooding drainage capacity of the systems that we have, and we're not inadvertently, reducing that capacity.
All of this sounds retroactive though, because it's almost as if though we built Belize City and now we're taking into consideration all the factors that ought to have been put in place before, perhaps in the municipal development plan, if there is such a thing, where all of these should have been considered and put in place and then we build out.
Well, I wouldn't say it's retroactive. I can remember back in 2014, there was a project with the flood mitigation infrastructure project. A part of that was the dredging, but for one reason or the other, the dredging did not occur. For many reasons. But we do understand how the flooding affects Belize City. We know that the Burden Canal acts as an inlet and an outlet. It effectively connects Siboon River with Belize City. Many people might not know that if you're not traveling on that system. But whenever the Siboon River floods, some of it goes out to the estuary and some comes in through what we call Boom Creek into Jones Lagoon, and then it comes up Burden Canal and into Belize City. Whereas if the Belize River is flooding, some of the floodwaters go into Burden Canal and they are discharged, which is why when we have some of these systems, everybody's waiting for the flood at Belize City and it doesn't occur. But it's that reverse function that happens. It's the same thing with the Hallover mouth. If the sediment is not there, most of the water goes out through the mouth, but because it's backstopped, it will go back into the Hallover Creek and then come through Belize City. So we do have an understanding of how flooding and floodwaters impact Belize City, but it's just the infrastructure, and we need to keep up with the changing landscape. That's the big issue. When we change the land use, we're changing the functions. We're either increasing or decreasing flood capacity.
From your standpoint, coordinator, do you see that Belizeans are reacting to this and they're taking their initiative to assist in the reduction of this kind of livelihood?
Yes, so in all of the communities we have been working, we have had very good support. When we go on and start to recruit members for our teams, we have people come. So we know that there's a willingness to participate, because I believe that Belizeans are all seeing the patterns changing. And so as we were talking before the show started, we are seeing things, and so when it should be wet, it's dry, and when it's dry, it should be wet. And so we are seeing these things, and so people are living these every day, and so I believe that they are very willing to participate and really to make that investment in risk reduction, particularly in those areas where people are living with vulnerabilities, people who are living in flood zones experiences, and so there's a need to change. And so taking that information and turning that into action is really important, and all within your capacities. And so we do believe that there is willingness, and there's a great need across the country for us to really make that investment. How
have you been seeing, Ronald, Meteorological Service advanced in its data collection and ensuring that we get the best data as soon as possible, particularly during this time?
Well, certainly, as I have said in different presentations, one of the things that we have done over the past recent years is the build out of our automatic weather stations across the country. So if your viewers are not aware, we do have a mobile app and a website, nms.gov.bz, where people can go in real time and click on these weather stations. They are well populated across the country. I also have a dense network of weather stations, and that is available for the public to see what's happening in real time across the country. Apart from the weather stations, we have our Doppler radar, which is still functioning, a bit old, but still functioning, and certainly another means for persons to get information in real time. You spoke about Belize City in particular, and we are currently working on a project, multi-hazard impact-based weather forecasting project for the Belize City and the Belize River watershed area. The main goal there is for us to go out into the communities along with our partners, of course, and to ensure that persons understand the messages that we are relaying to them, and also to get feedback, because we do realize that sometimes our communication is a bit scientific, and we need to break it down for persons to understand so that they know what we're saying when we issue an alert or a warning. So those are some of the initiatives that we're taking.
The only reason I ask that question is because every time we have a major hurricane or a major natural disaster, you all issue out the warnings, you all do your best to get the information out in time, but we still see people not abiding by some of the rules and the regulations. How do your various organizations try to support persons during the actual disaster itself?
Well, for us, it's really important to keep information flowing to people, because without information, people can't make decisions. But in all our advisories, we keep asking and we keep sending advice, and so our advisories are not just are created with it's a collaborative effort. So we include information from all the different agencies, and so you will see information and tips coming from that we extract from the hydrology service about what to do when you meet flood waters. You will see information from the Met Service as to what you should be expecting, and then you will see information about what we are recommending to you. And so it's really important for people to listen to the information and to follow the advice. I know that there are, the psychology of risk tells us that there are things that people don't want to do sometimes, even though they're facing danger.
Risk averse.
Yes, and so sometimes sometimes we tend to downplay the dangers, but it's really important that you should be ready and assume that every event is the big event, because you don't know if that will actually be it. So you need to be always in a state of readiness, and so that is what we continue to share. So for people who don't listen, really, we just want to encourage you to listen to the information, call someone who may know, so that you get better advice. And so that's really important. Information needs to keep going to people.
Perhaps it's either human nature or it's a cultural thing if we're talking about Belizeans, but more often than not, we wait until the system is imminent for us to kick into gear and try to do things at the last minute. And so, despite all the warnings and the messages and everything, Belizeans are just slow to start, so to speak. It's almost as if though we take for granted that it won't be as impactful, or you're not come my way to turn at the last minute and try not have to worry about anything. And when they do that, or I say when we do that as Belizeans, you find that a lot of times NEMA then has to go into overdrive, trying to rescue people, trying to do things where if they had paid keen attention from the beginning and heed those warnings, wouldn't have to be the case. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's, like I said, there are disaster myths, and so people sometimes believe that things will go, they won't affect them. we really, again, I can't stress the importance of listening to the warnings and preparing in advance and knowing, understanding where you live. If you live in an area that typically gets flooded during a normal rain event, it's very likely that you will see flooding during a hurricane. If you live in a hillside or in an area with susceptibility, you most likely will be experiencing those. So number one is understanding where you live and doing your own risk assessment. We can't just bury your head in the sand and then pray that it won't happen to you, but you need to prepare. And so you've heard us, our messaging from the start of the season. Ensure you have a plan, ensure you know where to go, ensure you know what to do, because when things like happen like that, it does cause us concern, because we have to send people into dangerous circumstances to rescue people, and think about those people as well. They have families, they need to be protected as well. So we need to work together to make this thing really functional.
Yeah. As we close, I would like for maybe each of you to give a message to our Belizean viewers this morning, how they can take action, how they can prepare for the hurricane season, even if we don't get, and of course we pray that we never get any sort of system coming our way, but still we have to be prepared at all times. So what's a message that you want to give out to our Belizeans? I'll start with you, Ronald.
Okay, sure. I think one of the most important thing is to, like we said, be on the alert and pay tuned to official information. Islandi mentioned the fact that people prepare late sometimes, and it's not going to come our way. And a part of that, the reason for that, there are many reasons, but one of them is, of course, the inherent uncertainty in forecast. I did mention it, a model is a model, right? So we always say sometimes, we look at the models, they change in time. So what I would advise is that people keep monitoring. You cannot look at a forecast 5 days in advance and say, you know what, this is definitely coming our way, and then start making, I would say, massive moves at that time. You need to monitor and gauge your level of preparedness, your resources actually, because we know another factor that influences people's behavior is whether they have the resource to actually take action. People don't want to invest and make certain moves unless they are certain it's coming their way, because they don't have the resources to do so. So it's good to monitor. And one of the things that I always say from our perspective, and I believe my colleagues share the sentiment, we try to provide scientific information. We do not try to over-sensationalize a system that is out in the Atlantic just for us to get views. We certainly want to ensure that what we provide to the public is meaningful, useful, and based on scientific facts. So again, I guess I always say this, but please stay tuned to official information. There's a lot of entertainers out there, and if people like to be entertained, I cannot stop them from doing that. But at the same time, I always say, come back to the source. Right? We have official source in the country, and these, my partner, my colleagues, and myself, these agencies are actually the official source of information to ensure that people get accurate and scientific information as best as possible within the margins of the error of a model. That's certainly the case. Thank you.
Well, for me, we keep on our message of preparedness. Prepare. You need to know where to go, what to do. You need to have your emergency kit ready to go. Your family plan needs to be ready. Your business plan needs to be ready. And so we'll keep on sending that message. In fact, we won't even stop at the hurricane season, because as soon as the hurricane season ends, we're looking at a new hazards. We could be facing drought and fires. And so you have to have a plan for emergencies at all times, and so we'll keep that message going.
All right, so I echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Always pay attention to our advisories. When we put out those advisories, it's because we have had a lot of deep thought, in terms of saying, put out an advisory for an alert versus a severe warning or a flood warning. We try to put on our infographics, because everybody loves pictures and infographics. So when we put out alerts, to the bottom of that imagery we would put flooding is possible, be prepared for our flood warnings, flooding will occur, take necessary action, and if it's severe flood warning, we're saying make sure you have your evacuation plan, start to move on it. As my colleagues have said, we're a bit reactionary we wait until the last minute. I think it's more of a culture thing. We don't move until something actually happens or there's actually some devastation that will, you know, scare us, that we need to move. So again, listen to the technical persons. We put a lot of work and thought into the advisories that we give persons, because essentially we're giving those advisories for ourselves. We also have families that we want to protect and make sure that, you know, they're safeguarded during any time.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. And of course, we will keep abreast with all of the information on your various sources of information. Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we have Manuef Export 2025 showcasing Belizean products to the world.